All right, now for something completely different. We're going to have a panel discussion. Panelists, please come up and I'll introduce you up here. We're going to have a panel discussion that's focused on diversifying the pipeline in biotech, specifically with emphasis on first-generation students. I'm going to give you a little bit of context, and then I'll introduce our panelists and we'll get to it. So just for context, we can all recognize, I think, that there is a lack of diversity in the biotech workforce. Hopefully that's not a controversial statement. We are not going to talk about why that's a problem. I'm going to ask you to assume that that's a given. And we're also not going to ask whether, we're not going to justify why we need to fix it. That's also a given in this context. What we're going to do is talk about what can be done to fix it. We're going to talk about some of the challenges. We're going to talk about some interventions, some solutions that work. And we're going to hopefully, through this discussion, give you some ideas about things, actions that you can go back to your companies, institutions, ideas of things that you can do to get involved and help contribute to addressing the problem. All right, so I'm going to start by introducing, one more thing. Quick definition, we're going to specifically focus on first-generation students here. If you're not aware, first-generation students are people who are the first in their family or the social circle to go into higher education. And so these are people who face a number of challenges, including just difficulty navigating the bureaucracy of academia. If you have nobody already in your family who has the faintest idea of how all that works, it can be quite confusing. There are often financial hardships. There are often problems around feeling like not belonging, not fitting in. Imposter syndrome is a big problem for people. And then there's additional, issues with racial discrimination and things like that, because those are often, not always, but often people who belong to minoritized groups. And so they have a constellation of challenges that they need to face, and so it's not really a wonder that the success rates tend to be lower than their peers who are not from that kind of background. And so I have an excellent panel joining me today that I will introduce briefly, and then we'll get to talking about solutions. Sorry, I just want to get this one right. Okay, so first I want to introduce Irina Silva, who is our field marketing manager. Her team has organized this whole event, made all this possible. It's obviously a collaboration, but in addition to doing that fantastic work, she also has a lot of experience, previous and ongoing experience, working on diversity building initiatives at Berkeley National Lab, and volunteer experience with being on the board, I believe, of an organization called Biotech Partners. Dr. Edgardo Sanabria-Valentín, and also my very good friend of many years. Edgardo is the Associate Director of Research and Retention Initiatives in Science and Math at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, a minority and Hispanic serving institution that is part of City University of New York. I needed my cheat sheet for that one because that was quite a mouthful. And then, with great pleasure of being joined by Dr. Lyndon Mitnaul. Lyndon is an executive director at the Regeneron Genetics Center and has partnered with, among others, the leadership of Meharry Medical College to propose a groundbreaking project called Together for Change that aims to catalyze change in the field of genomics specifically. So we'll be talking about that. So thank you, all three of you, for taking the time to join us for this panel. And we're going to get started. All right, so first I'd like to start with Edgardo, since your job is to work every day with students. I would like you, if you don't mind, to tell us a little bit about the challenges they face and the kind of things you do to set them up for success.
Sure. So whenever I go to a scientific conference, there you go. Okay, hi. Whenever I go to scientific conferences now, I've been now at John Jay for 10 years, and I have to usually explain why John Jay College of Criminal Justice. From the name, you wouldn't guess it, but we do have, particularly at our institution, a strong STEM program. After all, somebody needs to train the forensic scientists and the cybersecurity experts. And those are our two expertise areas in STEM. John Jay is part of the City University of New York, so around 50 to 55% of our students are first generation. We're also a public institution and a teaching intensive institution, which means that we're undersourced all the time. And at the political football of, since we're in New York, of Albany, whenever there's a budget deficit, we're the first ones to go. So we've had to come up with innovative strategies on how to help our students and set them up for success. We created the one main thing that works particularly for first generation students is academic support, and doing it almost intrusively. First generation students tend to see academic support tutoring as a remedial, which it shouldn't be. It should be support. So we rebranded it as academic support, and we bring it to the classroom and find strategies to bring it to the classroom so that they can succeed academically. Then the main strategy that has worked for us, particularly on the science side, has been providing mentorship opportunities. We developed an undergraduate research program, and most of you who went to research-intensive institutions were aware that undergraduate research is a given at those institutions, because after all, you have the lab, there's the labs, faculty members that can take the time to do that. At teaching intensive institutions, teaching intensive, faculty have to teach 7, 8 courses a year. So research is secondary, and by us providing resources to the faculty so that they can run their labs, we purchase them equipment, we give them supplies, and we provide training to our students. They can go into the labs, perform, join undergraduate research projects, and that has led to a large number of our students pursuing postgraduate opportunities in STEM. Over the last, since our program was founded 17 years ago, over those 17 years, over 350 students have been part of that particular initiative. Out of those, 155 have pursued some sort of postgraduate, and out of those, and I am so happy with this number, 75 have gotten accepted into PhD programs and are completing or will be completing. Of those, over 55% come from underrepresented populations, and the vast majority are first generation. So in summary, how can you help them? You need to find them. You need to come to programs like ours and offer your hands so that we can help place the right student to get that mentorship and experience for you that will set them up for success in the future.
Thank you very much. Irina, would you like to kind of build on that and talk about what you've done at Berkeley Labs and how that's kind of relates?
Yeah, absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Maybe wanted to give a little bit of context, because I think we have some delegates here who've come from abroad, and maybe they don't know the work of the national labs here in the United States. These are a network of national labs across the country, funded by the Department of Energy. They are dedicated to basic science, but they also have a very strong mission of fostering the next generation of scientists. National labs really have a forward-looking vision as to how to build the pipeline for getting students into science. So anybody here watch Oppenheimer? Okay. Oppenheimer started Los Alamos National Lab, and his friend in the movie, Ernest Orlando Lawrence, started Lawrence National Berkeley Lab. So that's where I worked for 6 years. When I came to the US as an immigrant myself, I was very lucky to get started there, and I worked in outreach and communications there. So at any given time, this national lab has about 800 interns every year cycling through their labs. This is a 3,000 person lab with 800 students across from high school to from four-year colleges and also community colleges. They are being mentored by scientists that come from very diverse backgrounds, really showing the diversity that is the Bay Area. So these students arrive there and they see scientists that look exactly like them. So what we used to do there, still do, is not only providing these research experiences, but also providing professional and helping them prepare for college applications. So they get a very strong foundational introduction to college level science, but our mentors are also asked to tell them very basic things like how to behave in an office, how to prepare college applications. Often their parents, as we have mentioned, have not gone to college themselves. They don't know how to prepare these things. These students need extremely basic support to get into science. So we ran a multitude of programs at Berkeley Lab, from bringing in students at elementary level to other programs that I thought were very impactful, such as very basic things such as laboratory visits. We had programs for local high schools to come in, so hundreds of students from high schools across the Bay Area would cycle through visits. We would also do AMAs, where the students could ask us absolutely anything. And often the questions they asked us would be, can I make a living out of this? These are students that are trying to make money to support themselves and support their families. They do not have the benefit to choose a career based on passion, right? They are trying to understand, can I make a career out of this? Can I afford it? Can I afford a life in this? And we show them that it is possible. So laboratory visits, they say, bring your kid to work day, these kinds of things, bringing them in. We also run internships during the summer, 2 months, so 8 weeks. The students are given a badge, they get on the bus, they go up the hill into Berkeley, and they work like everybody else for 8 weeks in the lab. And during that process, they also are paid. And this is very important. These are paid internships. They get a salary. They actually also get healthcare during those 8 weeks. The alternative would be for them to go work in fast food for the summer, to try to make some money to save for college. And we bring them in and already try to break that feeling feeling inadequate, right? We kill imposter syndrome from the beginning. Like, that's not going to be a thing. So those are some of the programs I ran while I was there, and I also worked at a nonprofit called, I was a board member and volunteer at a company called Biotech Partners. Biotech Partners has been running for 27 years. It grew out of an agreement by Bayer Pharmaceuticals and the city of Berkeley in 1993. They decided that they wanted to run a program for underprivileged communities in West Berkeley. At the time, this was not a very nice place in Berkeley. It was deprived, and the city of Berkeley said to Bayer, hey, do you want some land? We will give you land, but you have to help our populations. So they set up a nonprofit, and what they did was they said, okay, you're a student at a high school in Berkeley. You will follow your curriculum, but we're also going to give you additional biotech training during the year. So by the time that the summer comes, when you go work at a lab, you're actually even better prepared than a first year college student. And it was amazing. They would come in, they would spend those 8 weeks there, working part-time, being paid, and to me it was extremely fulfilling to see the progress.
That's fantastic, thank you. Lyndon, I'd be interested to get your perspective from the industry side of what it looks like from that side.
I think what we've all heard so far, and I agree with both panelists, that, you know, financial support's important, early exposure is important, inspiration to students is important, and having access to career paths that they would normally not see, right? And then build those pathways and pipelines for them to support them through. So for industry, we see, and this is what I encourage everyone in the room to see how your organization could contribute to this, is we've looked at it from a pharmaceutical industry standpoint, if you will, as what do we have that we can help support along that way, and we can support a lot along that way. We can expose the students to industry STEM careers. We have some finances, some resources that we can provide. We could generate resources and provide those resources to schools to support their students in areas that are, you know, hot topics in science now, like genetics. So that's what really inspired, you know, Regeneron to go out and recruit 3 other companies, pharma companies, AstraZeneca, Novo Nordisk, and Roche, to join us in this new initiative called Together for Change, where we're going to do some really good science and expand on genetics in the people of African ancestry population, but we're also going to build more scientists along the way, and then create this resource and provide that resource to these scientists so that they have a sustainable resource to bring in more funding to their organizations and build in this hot area of science. So I would say public-private partnerships are definitely something to consider and do. It's great that we have the government-private partnerships, public-private partnerships, but I think each organization in this room can look and see, okay, our company's good at doing this. We could be helping some school. If you choose one school, adopt a school that teaches them that technology, exposes their students to this field that you're doing. It can really inspire students to, change their life, especially these first-generation students.
Thank you. You mentioned the Together for Change. When I heard about that project initially, it really struck me as really particularly interesting, and I'm going to give a tiny bit of context. So for those of you who might be familiar, and I think it starts from, my comment starts from, we all know that the data sets in genomics are still very much biased. They're not representative of the makeup of the population, just even looking at the US, okay? There are projects that are trying to rectify that from a certain standpoint. If you're familiar with the All of Us research program, it's a federal program that aims to generate a data sets from 1 million Americans, with a heavy emphasis on the diversity of the study participants. There's been a lot of effort put into outreach. They've been, by many metrics, successful in recruiting quite a lot of people and have amassed a very diverse data sets. However, the model for how they're doing it is still very much the old model of it's the same big groups who are collecting the data, who are getting the first crack at the data. That means it's the same groups that are going to get the Glam Mag papers. It's the same people who are going to continue to have the best opportunities to lead the science. And so it does a lot for the diversity of the data. It does nothing for the diversity of the workforce that's going to work with that data. And so what struck me about your project is that it actually seeks to address that. And I'd love it if you could tell us a bit about that.
Yes, so the All of Us study is a great study, very supportive of the study. And because it's a federally funded study, it had to be open source to all researchers, who would like access to the data. That's all in good in diversifying and addressing that diversity of genetics. But to your point, it doesn't build sustainable resources at underrepresented, underserved schools that are in this space. So Together for Change said, we're going to do something totally different and generate and sequence 500,000 people of African ancestry and link their genetic information to harmonized, curated, harmonized phenotype data like electronic health record information, and provide all of that data to members of the new institute that we're standing up calling the Diaspora Human Genomics Institute that will take membership from underrepresented schools like HBCUs, institutions in Africa, and other minority-serving institutions. As a member of the DHGI, you can get access to the data if you have a trusted research environment to confirm, and you can collaborate. You can share the data with other academic collaborators. We don't want to prevent collaboration. We want to encourage collaboration, actually, because there's a lot of major institutions that could help teach these HBCUs how to analyze that data. So the whole point is Together for Change. So it is different in that respect because we do want multi-institutional funding to come to these schools by giving them the first crack at analyzing the data and publishing on the data, recruiting faculty to their schools to study this large resource that's unique, that's everyone doesn't have access to. So that was the idea.
I think it's an idea that has a potential to actually catalyze change in a way that we haven't seen yet, because it very intentionally builds in mechanisms to promote that change. And so I'd be interested in hearing now from Irina and Edgardo, what are your thoughts in terms of plugging into that? If that kind of model was set up, how would the existing programs kind of plug into that to take advantage of that?
Could you maybe reframe that? Like, how would these programs that we've been running?
Potentially, like, if there are mechanisms to increase access to data, collaborations where students could get involved in these kinds of data sets, the analysis of these kinds of data sets, are there things that you can think of that would apply to what you're already doing and kind of build on that? Or Edgardo, if you have thoughts.
Well, I was actually talking to Lyndon about this earlier, and I think the biggest impact is going to that this particular project is going to have is offering a template for further collaborations between industry and academia on the sphere of working with underrepresented students and institutions that serve those populations. Right now, most minority-serving institutions most of them are public, most of them are underfunded. All of us, particularly now with the enrollment cliff, if you don't know what that is, look it up, it's a thing. And if you come from a small liberal art college in New England, look into it because your college and your alma mater might be on the way out. Just be aware. It's happening next year, it's 2025. 18 years after 2008. Put two and two together and tell me what happened. So by having that template, further collaboration and further ideas on different subgroups of data or different subgroups of different populations can then be facilitated, because nobody wants to be the first one. Nobody wants to take the first risk. I know that a lot of you work in biotech and a lot of you work in startups. You were the first ones to do what you're doing. You know how hard that is when you go in with that first idea being the first one. So by having a template and having a partner like Regeneron be the one, a big international company like that, be the one leading this, it provides that template so that then we can move on and create further collaborations like this.
Yeah, I just want to add that specifically, though, I do think there's some opportunities for data access. And, I know you guys have been talking about how to analyze large data sets. And, that's a space where, again, a lot of minority institutions are not getting that sort of exposure on the new techniques or the new ways of looking at large data. So having a large data set and just looking at how to analyze a large data set, not specifically for genetic GWAS, for example, but in terms of machine learning about, better predictors of something and using this as a training set for that algorithm. That's another space. So it really depends on how schools and what schools are interested in, and that's why there's the genetics component. There's a lot of epidemiology data that's there with the phenotype data on 500,000 people, right? There's social aspects, of social determinants of health and so forth. So there's a lot of ways of looking at the data, and it really depends on the school and the organization of how their interests are. There's some schools that want to do genetics. There's some who want to do AI development, and so forth.
And what are the kind of needs in terms of access to technology of some of these schools? Do you think that that's one of the stumbling blocks?
Yes, they never had to build an infrastructure to house 500,000 people's data set or to analyze that type of data set. And it's not like we're going to be dropping 500,000 data, next year. This is going to be a progression, so we grow, as we sequence. So we do a freeze at 50,000, we do a freeze at 100,000, we do a freeze at so forth. So we expand the breadth of the study as we were teaching how to analyze those larger and larger and larger data sets.
You also mentioned, so to me that's part of it is a capacity building.
Yeah.
There's a teaching aspect. Teaching them how to fish, really. So providing access to platforms, providing the training to use the tools, and making sure that then they become autonomous so that they can pursue their own research without depending on the collaborators. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and we built in funding for that. So there's this funding for the genetics study, and then there's a grant that we have provided to the Diaspora Human Genomics Institute for training. We're going to be putting on webinars. We'll love if you guys like to participate. Please reach out to me. We'll love your company to be a part of this on how to analyze, store big data sets, and so forth. We're going to do that now while we're getting the cohorts sequenced in this next year and a half. So that way, when we do have data for them to analyze, they know how to do it. So we should be teaching them now, and there's funding, et cetera, for that.
You mentioned the Institute for the Human Diaspora.
Diaspora Human Genomics Institute.
Yes, okay. And that involves collaboration with Africa, I believe, right?
So this is a new 501c3 nonprofit that was chartered by Meharry Medical College, but is totally independent of Meharry, although Meharry is sitting on their board of directors and along with other external board of directors. We are looking to hire folks to manage this institute. We have 0 employees at the time. Hopefully we'll hire a few folks. We are looking for a data person, a data officer, so please, if you know some folks, let me know. We want to build a cloud environment so they can house the data in the cloud and be able to share it. But that institute is managing the whole initiative, and that institute is our contracting institute with 4 companies.
Okay. Because the question of capacity building is one that applies equally on the African continent throughout, and there have been some very interesting initiatives.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Africa. So because it's through this institute, Diaspora Human Genomics Institute, they're going to be working with our HBCUs here. So the membership for the DHGI will be from U.S. HBCUs and other minority-serving institutions, as well as international initiative and institutes in Africa, across Africa. We've already engaged, and we're going to have some of them joining soon.
That's fantastic, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned, I think, for how these, how this new model of doing things can really bring about change for a lot of populations who struggle with the same problems, right? So I'd be interested in hearing from you two how you think that's going to lead to sustainable change at the levels that you're involved.
I can speak to that, and I have to go back to what I know, which is, I live in this beautiful place, it's Berkeley, California, and we've been doing this for 30, 40 years, and I can tell you it is possible. We just have to have a more forward vision. And when I was a board member of Biotech Partners, we thought about it as a tripod. You have to bring schools, you have to bring the industry that's there, and also the school districts and the cities to support these students. So if you think about it, we're removing that pressure of putting it all on the student. It has to be a systemic change to lead, to improvements, in the workforce. So what I can tell you is that it is possible, and I don't know if this is a good time to maybe even call out some numbers and metrics,
sure,
right?
Yes. We love numbers
We're
here,
all
right?
about the numbers and metrics, and I couldn't memorize it all, so I brought a little cheat sheet here. But going back to this work by this nonprofit called Biotech Partners, which was founded in 1993. So what they've been able to do is diversify the workforce of Bayer Healthcare Campus in West Berkeley. So their campus right now is showing, as of 2020, when they survey their employees, as having 40% Asian American, 32% white, 12% Hispanic Latino, 9% Black and African American, and 2% Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. You could ask me, does this actually track with the makeup of the local population? Because the Bay Area also does bring a lot of immigrants, for example, Asian populations that come over to study and do postdocs and PhDs and postdocs. So I can tell you that it does track with the general makeup of the city of Berkeley. So city of Berkeley does show white, 55%, Asian, 20%, Hispanic, 12%, and African American, 8%. So this does correspond more or less with the change that the Berkeley campus has been able to bring, to their workforce. Now, contrast this with the numbers by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics from 2018. They show that 78% of life sciences industry in the U.S. is still white, right? So the numbers are there. With a program that is well thought through, with bringing simple steps year by year, you are able to diversify your workforce. But it takes investment. And so what we've seen also in the Bay Area is that this investment comes not just from one biotech. I've been mentioning a lot of one biotech, but we were able to collaborate with many startups and large companies across the Bay Area. Even like companies like Genentech have taken our students to intern in their labs. They go there, they intern in their labs for that summer, they go to college, and they come back. These students have already cycled through, they've already finished college, they've already actually gone to work in these companies. It's been 27 years, right? They're already working there and already mentoring students themselves. So again, it doesn't happen overnight, but I think with every, I'm not saying that each of you has to take like 10 interns every year, right? But if one research group takes one intern for the summer and you divide the work of mentoring that student over the summer, that is a massive win. So we're not asking a lot from biotech companies.
But it adds up, and it's a reservoir of talent. You know, it is a reservoir of talent. Hiring is difficult. It's something we all. You have talented people who have been getting help. They're ready to work. They're ready to go to. Edgardo, I think you had even. Give me your baseball analogy that you gave me in the car, because I think, or if there's something else that comes to mind, but I feel like you have some perspectives on that.
Yes.
Because part of it, like you constantly, working to get people into spots. So.
In particular, I wanted to make sure that I came to you with 3 practical things you can do from your position. And I know that we're coming to the end of this. I know that you're looking at your teams. I saw some people coding in the back. Here is the part that you want to pay attention, or I would appreciate if you do, because I want to give you 3 simple things you can do that can help you make a difference. The first one is the pipeline exists. There's programs at institutions like mine. There's programs with the national labs, which are incredible. I've had students have done it, and they're doing amazing things afterwards. There are pipelines at the research-intensive institutions, but the problem with the pipeline is that the pieces of the pipes are not very well connected. So that's where you can make an impact. Let me give you an example with the national labs. I have an account with Syntellect. I get all the 15,000 daily emails and their summaries of all the internships nationwide. And it's part of my job to sort through them and forward the ones that I think my students are going to be interested in. Out of that, maybe 1 or 2 apply a year. Brookhaven National Labs had a staff member that grew up through the CUNY system, and he took it upon themselves to create a stronger pipeline to focus, to funnel students from our institutions. And what they did, they partnered with an association. I'm a member of the Association for Program Administrators for C-STEP and STEP programs in New York. And they basically created a little application system for an introductory program so that students would be more aware of what Brookhaven is and guide them to apply to programs there. He did this on his own. It was a little bit of extra work, I'm not gonna lie to you, but what happened was that out of that number of students that I mentioned from my program that have done work at national labs, half of them have done it in Brookhaven. Why? Because this person came to our annual meeting, talked to us, told us this is the programs that we have, this is our focus, these are the researchers that are going to be working on. They taught me and they taught us what are they looking for in our students so that we can then guide the right students to them. So you can be that. I'm not asking you to take all of higher education, it's a big field, but maybe make a partnership with your alma mater. Maybe make a partnership with the community college down the street. Find the person that sits in my chair. The person that has the mission of helping the students and also knows the students. Come to us, teach me, what are you looking for? Teach me, what is it that you do? That's the reason why I came in early this morning, because I know you've told me like 15 times what is it that Seqera does. It wasn't until this morning that I figured it out finally. I got it finally, now I know.
Pipeline acceleration.
Second, be prepared to teach. And I worked in biotechs before going back to higher education, and I know particularly in startups, you want interns that come fully prepared so they can come in, hit the ground running, and move on. Okay, you're just gonna keep getting students from the same institution that know how to do exactly what you want them to do. They're gonna come do it and move on. If you want to actually create an impact, you're gonna have to teach a little. Think about it, and here's where a sports allegory that Geraldine knows me, very rare for me, almost, I actually got it from a different TV show. Imagine yourself, you are a baseball recruiter, and you have 2 candidates for your team. One of them had the best training money can buy, did all the summer camps, have gone to the right schools, have gone to the right teams. You have another one who learned by themselves, who learn how to play on the street, on their local team, did not come from a school that's known, or a particular area that's known for producing high-performance baseball players. They both have the same stats. Which one do you pick? You pick the one that trained themselves. Why? Teach them the right form, you have an all-star. The talent exists. is just a little bit rough around the edges in our side. Why? Again, we are slightly under-sourced or slightly under-resourced, so you want to help you identify them and help us also shine that rock into a diamond. Third step, partnerships between this, your CEO and the president of the college is great. That's where the conversation starts. It cannot end there. It needs to come down, and there needs to be an alignment, again, with people that sit on your position, that are going to be working with the students, and that sit on my position, that know the student. And I have an example. We had a new president come into our college about 6 years ago. One of our best friends is a VP at Pfizer, I think it was. And when she started at John Jay, they went out to lunch. She told them about our program. He's like, oh, yes, we start. That started there. By the time that it came to me, from the president to the provost to the VP to the dean to me, and from their side, from a VP on Pfizer all the way to human resources, it became an email with a link to their normal internship program. My program is 10. That's where I eat. That's where I park my car. Most of the internships for Pfizer that is advertised for undergrads are in the legal department. So even though they had the best, they had all these things that they were going to do, if it doesn't come and there's not alignment at the level of the people that work with the students, that alignment is not going to really go anywhere.
So think it through, huh? All right. Well, Lyndon, do you have some closing thoughts as we get to the end of our discussion?
Closing thoughts. I would just say, as Edgardo just said, and Irina said, look at your company and what your capabilities are, interests are, and try to align those, because I'm sure there are schools out there that can align with that. So it's doing something within your own mission, but you're bringing along this inspiration of generating the next generation scientists. So look for those connections.
Thank you very much. We have like 2 minutes. We could take a question from the audience if somebody is particularly inspired. Yeah. Oh,
yes. So my question is that I'm initially starting a project with indigenous people in Costa Rica, which is where I'm from. And you can imagine these people are, some of them, they live in tribes that are remote, very little school, poorly, may speak Spanish, kinda, and no money. Also a history of exploitation and marginalization, right? At the same time, for example, we have maybe access to some DNA samples for historical reasons that I won't go into. So 2 things. I see, for example, there was one young man, brilliant man that came, for various reasons. He was found to be a brilliant person, and he chose to study physical education. He has no, so maybe what I point to this is that some of these people, young people, have no clue about genomics or pipelines or Nextflow, or let alone any kind of thing of that, right? So one of the things is how to inspire people who have no clue about that, and maybe who have very different social and economic pressures, right? Also, a second tied thing to this, and we don't need to talk about it, but we can talk about it some other time, is that the genomic data. I mean, there's a history of white people take my genome, and they're gonna do whatever, 23andMe and whomever it is. And so how do you respect that, so just this brief thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give my quick response, and please add to it. But the first question about, folks in different regions having different needs. It's not going to be a one fix for everyone, and you get the same sort of menu if you work with this partnership. It should be custom to the needs of that community. A lot of folks that I'm speaking with in Africa, for example, about Together for Change, they're saying, hey, look, we would love if you can help us build water wells in our community. That's what our community needs right now. So it's really addressing the needs of the community and hearing each example and each partnership in isolation, independently. And then the second question about data security, and this is where I think we have an opportunity now. Whenever there's some new technology coming out, we just saw this with mRNA vaccines with COVID, right? People didn't know what mRNA was. So you're trying to play catch up and train people and teach people what it is and say, take this vaccine because it's going to save your life. Well, we have time now with AI, ML, big data, with genetics to train and educate the community now, have them to be a part of this movement. And this is where I believe public-private partnerships are so important, to build these relationships with communities and have community engagement events and hear people out, hear their concerns about 23andMe and talk about why this study is any different and have those conversations.
And I want to connect to that too. We had a keynote speaker yesterday who was a cancer researcher, also a cancer survivor, and she spoke very eloquently about the importance of involving patients in initiatives. And she showed us some wonderful examples of patient-partnered engagements, and I feel like this really connects, to me, that's the connective tissue here, is engaging with communities, talking to them, finding out what are their needs, and then devising solutions together where there's a good alignment. And that is, I think, how you get to successful, sustainable change.
The second part of your question is very interesting. It's not something I know very much about, but I just wanted to point you to a resource and a person that I know is very passionate about that, Dr. Marcus Lambert at SUNY Downstate Medical College. He just wrote a paper on what he calls helicopter research. And it's when big institutions come in, grab the data, grab the samples, and then they come back. And he has a lot of, just published a study looking at the socioeconomical effects that can have on the populations that the data is being extracted from, and has a call to action, particularly with his school and the population that they serve in Brooklyn, to make sure that other institutions that are doing this are actually committing themselves to helping the community. So he's also a great guy.
I think with that, we are out of time. Now I wish we had 2 hours for the discussion. But I really want to thank our panelists, all three of you. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I hope you all will go out there and do something. Thank you.